This is the download from Sounds Profitable, your daily source for the essential news in the business of podcasting, brought to you by Spreaker from iHeart. I'm Gavin Gaddis. Here's what you need to know for today, Wednesday, January 8th. Our first story, Headliner and Sounds Profitable, hey, that's us, release paid podcast promotion landscape. The new resource is designed to aid podcasters in the world of paid promotion. The paid podcast promotion landscape offers a bird's eye view of the industry ecosystem, inventorying key platforms, tools, and available resources. Headliner has made the document available for free download, and we encourage folks working in relevant areas of podcasting not listed to consider submitting for a future update. And for a more zoomed out look at podcasting as an industry, check out the Podscape, also available for free download from Magellan AI. Next up, podcasts are taking over TV screens as video formats grow increasingly popular. This piece from NBC News at the end of the year covered podcasting's growing popularity, particularly the surging popularity of podcasting being consumed on TVs over traditional talk show programming. In addition, podcasting made a splash last year with some of the biggest programs becoming national news items when presidential candidates appeared on episodes of The Joe Rogan Experience this past weekend with Theo Von and Call Her Daddy. Tom Webster, quoted in the piece, points to communal capabilities of video podcasting over talk show TV. A video podcast on YouTube has a comment section where audiences can engage and build community as well as interact with hosts and guests in a way that TV does not allow. Next up, navigating the landscape of serialized podcasts. This one comes to us from Dan Meisner at Bumper, a piece that establishes what qualifies as a serialized podcast, how consumption patterns differ from traditional week-to-week series, and reasons why a production would favor a serialized production over a standard talk show. For instance, as the Podcast Landscape 2024 found, 74% of U.S. podcast consumers who listened to a limited series in the past year went on to find another podcast to listen to. To demonstrate the interconnectedness of serialized podcast listenership, Bumper has built out several interactive graphs that map out serial podcast neighborhoods. Next up, 5 things we learned from 65,000 plus audio listeners in 2024. This comes from Signal Hill Insights. They've shared their collected data from 2024 in a greatest hits format, highlighting the statistic that 70% of the 65,000 surveyed audio listeners include podcasts in their audio diet. Big takeaways include the fact that podcasts are hitting the mainstream, with the majority of adults in the United States and Canada having listened to a podcast at least once, and that said podcast audience is not a monolith. People come to podcasts for a variety of reasons, whether to be entertained, educated, or updated on their industry's big stories. The better producers are able to understand how these different needs translate into genre and show choice, the better they can set creators and listeners up for success. And for a final big story, advertising's deal makers are gearing up for a 2025 surge. From Live Ramo's acquisition of Habu to Walmart acquiring Vizio, 2025 is off to a strong start for merger and acquisitions. However, founders and executives report the pressure is mounting to close deals and show investors substantial returns. With the incoming presidential administration, companies are watching for signs that the flow of M&A could be disrupted, although none have presented themselves so far. Cautiously optimistic industry leaders are focused on consolidation and preparation for a healthy macroeconomic climate to hopefully continue. Before I get into the quick hits, I have a little section I'm calling New Positions, because we had so many people moving to new positions. Might as well give them a little highlight. First up, Ariel Nissenblatt has joined podcast production company Audely as Director of Community and Content. Michael McDonald has been hired to SVP of Sales and Business Development at Lemonada Media, joining from iHeart. And Tamala Edmonds and Jeff Stormer have joined True Native Media. Edmonds joins as campaign manager, Stormer as talent development manager. As for the rest of the news, the iHeart Podcast Awards are returning to South by Southwest this year. Sports comedy host Katie Nolan is set to launch the sports podcast Casuals with SiriusXM Media. Alex Cooper's The Unwell Network has acquired Going West and Cheers, the network's first acquisition of existing shows. Ad Results Media and Stagwell Brand Performance Network have announced a partnership centered around audio marketing. Odyssey Podcast, Red Hour, and Great Scott have launched the Severance Podcast as a companion to the Apple TV Plus show that's coming with a new season soon. Westwood One has released a study dubbed the Creative Best Practices Handbook. And Moonfox Data has published a report looking at first-party data from podcast apps in China. Be sure to check out the links to every article mentioned right in your podcast listening app or at soundsprofitable.com, where you can also subscribe to the newsletter version. The download is written and produced by Newton Shuttlecotty, Brian Barletta, Gavin Gaddis, and Tom Webster. Hey, one of those is me. This episode was hosted on Spreaker. For Sounds Profitable, I'm Gavin Gaddis. Download us again tomorrow.